Hello, everyone. Welcome to my new course. I am Wang Jun-Jieh. I currently teach at the Department of New Media Art of Taipei National University of the Arts. In this New Media Art online course, the section that I am responsible for is about the development of new media art and its genres. Additionally, I will talk about future transdisciplinary development of new media art. In this class, I will use a refined method to discuss the development of new media art. And then I will give a few example works from important artists and some stories from their experiences. Of course, at the end, we will give examples of how new media art can, in application, be connected to daily life and with the public. Then, as for transdisciplinary art, we will cover some exciting integrative examples. Let's begin. New media art is actually already one of the most representative manifestations of art in the digital age. But we often hear many similar terms. For instance, new media art, technology art, digital art, they all sound alike. So, how do we define new media art? Typically, new media art is the most inclusive because it refers to the use of new media concepts to create art. Of course, this includes artistic expressions from analog to digital. The narrowest definition is digital art, because it specifically refers to using tools of digital technology and coding to create art. Many people ask what exactly is media art. So here we will give it a very simple definition. Works of new media art have strong time, space, and interactivity. Use tools of digital technology and a medium of scientific logic for diverse artistic thought and creation. In the digital era, images have already become the most common language of communication. Actually, images are humanity's most primitive form of communication. So, now we already know that the earliest image humans created from about 40,000 BCE during the Paleolithic Age. The latest we have discovered are cave murals in Sulawesi, Indonesia. Some of its images were actually used as tools of communication by early humans. Or they were a kind of magic ritual used for lucky hunts. So, when we are discussing the origins of new media art, we can actually start with the earliest images. So, how exactly did the earliest images in history begin? What's very interesting is that many artists will, in their images, directly express the origin of their work. This, for example, in 1775, the Scottish artist David Allen painted a picture called The Origin of Painting. In the painting, he depicted a love story from the island of Crete during ancient Greece. It depicts a warrior soon to leave for Troy to participate in battle. Because his lover is very reluctant for him to leave, she outlines his shadow on the wall to remember him. So this demonstrates something very interesting. We say when defining early paintings that there are three very important elements: light, objects, and shadow. In the three elements of painting, light is actually really important. Humans can see things not because we have eyes, but because of light. So, in new media art, actually it has some philosophical extensions. For instance, Plato, the ancient Greek philosopher, in 390 BC, wrote a very important work called The Republic. In chapter 7, he recorded a dialogue between Socrates, his teacher, and his students. In the book, it describes a prisoner locked in a dark prison deep underground, and their movements. When a prisoner leaves the prison and sees the surface, the so-called sunshine of the earth, he can perceive the real world. It's different from the underground phantoms. So he uses his metaphor for a pursuit of light and truth. This very important composition is called the allegory of the cave. New media art is basically a combination of the influences and the integration of art and technology. In Western history, during the Renaissance, we can actually clearly see that it emphasized humanism as its basis and released people from the former bonds of religion, and through this propelled important developments in natural sciences. Actually, everyone is very familiar with a very important character from the Renaissance called Da Vinci. Da Vinci was basically a combination of artist, architect, mathematician, engineer, anatomist, botanist, geologist, all of these rolled in one. He was a very special cultural person. Also, because in classical times, scientific research, invention and theory, and the cultural renaissance had this kind of close relationship. It wasn't quite like modern specialized fields. So, many of the very influential inventions of art of the time were propelled by scientists. For example, photography, to which images are closely connected, was initially a technological invention and the earliest one connected to new media. The earliest photographic theory is called camera obscura, or anxiang in Chinese. It is an optical instrument that uses light passing through a lens and a reflection from a mirror to present a scene for viewers. The theory of a camera obscura already existed in the West since before the Common Era. For instance, the Greek philosopher Aristotle, in his book Problems, once mentioned it. In 1604, the mathematician Kepler was the first to use the term camera obscura. The earliest photography was actually done by the French inventor Niepce. In 1825, he used a technique called heliography to make a copy of a Dutch printmaker's work called Child Pulling a Horse. But we don't see this work as being the first work of photography because it was a copy. The next year, in 1826, he spent 8 hours on an exposure and finally succeeded in taking a photograph of the view out of his window. That picture became the first photograph to really capture natural scenery. Because of this, the subsequent development of photography proceeded by leaps and bounds. In 1878, the British photographer Muybridge, while employed in the U.S., created the horse in motion. This was his first time using multiple cameras to photograph objects in motion in a dynamic series. These dynamic series of images directly influenced the coming futurism and gave birth to the development of moving pictures. Inside new media art, actually the most important images were transformed from static to dynamic. When we talk about moving pictures, the most important thing is to talk about the invention of movies. After the American scientist Thomas Edison invented the very important phonograph in 1888, he actually designed the first movie projector, kinetoscope. Kinetoscope, and in 1889 experimented with his first movie, Monkey Shines. In 1894, he built a movie studio. He named the studio Black Maria Studio. In this studio, when still testing, he filmed his assistant Fred Ott sneezing. The film, just a few seconds long, is called Fred Ott's Sneeze. This later became a very interesting progenitor of the beginning of movies. After Edison invented the kinetoscope, actually he didn't continue to develop it. But this machine eventually made it to France in Europe, and then was acquired by a manufacturer of photographic plates, the Lumiere brothers. They disassembled Edison's machine and recreated it. In 1895, on the Champs-Élysées in Paris, they opened the world's first cinema. In the cinema, they screened many of the earliest famous movies, including workers leaving the Lumiere factory or Arrival of a Train at La Ciotat, and other famous early movies. After entering the 20th century, reproducible photography and film began to blow up. So, there was the so-called painting is dead phrase. Among them, the German scholar Walter Benjamin, in 1936, published an important article called The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. He said that past works of art were imbued with a unique kind of spirit by artists. In this era of mechanical reproduction, the special spirit has disappeared. So that's why he has the famous "the disappearance of aura" phrase. By the end of the 19th century, due to the advancement of technology, people's lifestyles were directly affected. In art, it created the first important avant-garde artistic movement in the 20th century, Futurism. In 1909, the Italian poet Marinetti, in the Paris newspaper Le Figaro, published the Manifesto of Futurism. In these, he emphasized that with the advent of the technological age, they have discarded historical things of the past era. He praised very highly the sense of speed brought by the invention of industrial machinery. They were especially infatuated with the automobile. Many creations express the connection between time and motion, and because of this, they started a new trend of thought in contemporary art. Some representative works include those of Boccioni. He drew this red car. Balla is another representative artist. He has an oil painting called Dynamism of a Dog on a Leash. In this painting, he depicts the dynamism of a woman walking a dog. When discussing the relationship between technology and art, actually we definitely need to touch on the Industrial Revolution. The first Industrial Revolution started in 1760. From the first Industrial Revolution to the present, actually it has already gone through different stages of Industrial Revolution, such as the Steam Age, the Electrical Age, and the Information Age. In fact, it has brought about fundamental changes to people's lives. Important inventions of different eras actually have directly contributed to the development of new media art. Because of the Industrial Revolution, for instance, the spread of television and video recorders directly contributed to the rapid development of video art in the 1970s. Television as a medium began being used in the mid-1920s. The subsequent influence of this on broadcast media was huge. As the electronic image medium, the development of video systems was also very important. For example, in 1951, the Crosby Company started a video equipment experiment. In 1964, Japan's Sony Corporation developed a half-inch portable video recorder system. At the time, there was a model called CV2000. Additionally, the computer, which has a close connection to the digital age, began to be researched in the early part of the 19th century by British father of computers, Babbage. In 1981, the American company IBM released the 5150 desktop computer, and they named it PC, our current so-called personal computers. And because of this, computers began to be popularized, allowing artists to more easily move from analog to digital art creation. The film of new media art to the present has only existed for 70 years, but its overall form of expression is actually very diverse. So, an easier way to categorize is by using the main media of creation and methodologies. Basically, at present, classifications of new media art include video art, sound art, kinetic art, interactive art, net art, light art, visual reality, future cinema, bioart, transmedia technology performances, and exhibition display technology. Now, for each of these different categories, we will give a basic introduction. First, let's discuss video art. Video art actually uses video as a medium to create a moving image. It includes single and multi-channel recording, and there are different forms of video installations. Before video art began to develop, artists often used televisions as a medium for artistic creation. In 1958, the German artist Vostell was a first to use a television behind a canvas with holes in it to create a work called TV Décollage. He used this work to criticize television as a medium that influences mass ideology. In 1965, Andy Warhol, with whom everyone is familiar, first used the Norelco company to develop a work he made with a portable video camera called Outer and Inner Space. This is a stereo video installation. Later, during the same year in 1965, the Korean artist Nam Jun-Paik used another portable video recorder developed by Sony to shoot Pope Paul VI as he paraded through New York. Jun-Jieh has many famous works of video art, including the TV Buddhas. He also became known as the father of video art. Sound art is actually not the same as music. It doesn't use instruments or melody as its main means of development. Instead, it uses sound as its medium of creation. It includes noise, electronic, self-made instruments, installations, acoustic systems, calculations, and audiovisual. Sound art particularly emphasizes using concepts of space and time derived from sound to create. In 1913, the futurist artist Russolo published The Art of Noises. He especially emphasizes that noise accompanies people's lives and that it can invoke our lives. It was the originator of the oft-discussed sound art. Kinetic art refers to creations that have a dynamic nature and integrate visuals. It often uses the mutual impact of motors, magnets, wind, light, etc. to create mechanical changes. In 1920, the sculptors Gabo and Pevsner, in the Constructivist Manifesto of Reality, were the first to use the term kinetic art. In this process, there are actually many famous representative artists, including Nicholas Schoeffer, Anthony Howe, or the German Rebecca Horn. There are also some famous Taiwanese representative artists, such as Xu Ruixian and Luxury Logico. Next is interactive art. Interactive art is basically a very representative language of creation in the entire field of new media art. Through digital control programs, it especially emphasizes that the artist, the audience, and the work must have a mechanism of mutual interaction. Typically, these are presented in the form of an installation. In 1989, the Australian artist Geoffrey Shaw created a work called Legible City. In this work, you can use a bicycle to ride through a city space made of letters. Then, through turning the handle of the bicycle, you can control its speed and direction. It is one of the earliest works of art that uses purely a program control. Other representative artists include Art Plus Com and the French and German couple Sommerer and Mignonneau, and the Japanese Toshio Iwai. Internet art media basically uses the internet to create art that is conceptual, critical, social, and reflects on technology. In the past, the internet was basically entirely controlled by governments and militaries. In 1991, the US government opened up the internet for use by the general public and businesses. In 1994, there was one of the earliest plans to use the internet to plan and exhibit artworks on a website. It was called Ada Web. It directly invited artists to create on the internet, and through this process, many representative artists created works frequently, including the Dutch artist Jody and the Russian artists Lialina and Josh On. There's also a famous Taiwanese artist, Xu Lijiang, who often uses the internet to create. For example, Josh On has an internet artwork called They Rule. He collected enterprise information from the top US 100 companies and then put it all together for viewers to select. When viewers make a selection of the composition of a company's board of directors and the distribution of each director's assets, viewers will see that they compose a structure like a spider web. That's to say, the assets of the world are concentrated in the hands of a very small number of people. So, through a work of internet art, he criticized the way the world economy flows. Additionally, Jody, the two-person art team from the Netherlands, has early works that are focused on the internet world or criticizing the acquisition of information through the internet. They design things that would destroy your browser like hackers, and then through this kind of mechanism would come to understand that sources of knowledge have already come to be controlled by computers or the internet world. If the day comes when I don't have a computer, then would the information of knowledge be completely blocked? So, through the works of these internet artists, they are actually criticizing the internet itself. Visual reality is the use of computers to create a three-dimensional virtual world. It is immersive, interactive, and imaginary, allowing users to feel that they are actually experiencing it. In 1968, the computer graphics creator Sutherland created the first immersive head-mounted display for simulations. The extended media of virtual reality includes different kinds of display methods such as augmented reality, which we know as AR, and mixed reality, MR. Representative artists include Taiwan's Tao Ya Lun, the work La Camera Insabiata, created by the American artist Laurie Anderson and the Taiwanese artist Xin Huang. These are all famous representations. Bioart is a type of art that is inspired by technologies such as biology, genetics, and genetic theory. It looks like it is a very cutting-edge, difficult field. But in recent years, bioart has already been expanded to many areas that are related to daily life. In 1936, the American photographer Steichen used larkspur that he hybridized himself and exhibited it in the New York Museum of Modern Art. This is the first time that bioart was exhibited in a museum. In 1997, the Brazilian-American artist Eduardo Katz created a work called Time Capsule. He implanted a biochip into his ankle and then made himself into part of an animal and then uploaded it into the so-called animal registry. In 2000, the same artist, Katz, used fluorescent proteasomes, the so-called green fluorescent compound, and cultivated them inside of a rabbit, creating a rabbit that glows with green fluorescence. This is all a questioning of genetic engineering, and it led to a creation using artistic thinking. So, in recent years, more and more artists have begun working in the field of bioart. Representative artists include the American Eduardo Katz, the Australian Stellark, and the American artist Dewey. As we have talked about, the development of so many genres related to a new media art, do you think that the field of new media art is not quite the same as traditional art? Basically, apart from combining art and technology, it strongly emphasizes that according to the times, it will go through various transformations, and that it is a completely new area of art, especially in concepts of artistic creation. It is adjusted according to the entire changes of the times. Using my own creations as an example, in the 1990s, I made many works that had to do with visual products. Among them, there's one called Little Mutton Dumplings for the 13th Day. At the time, I gathered a lot of foods that were eaten by Chinese emperors throughout history, and then used a modern method to make something like a modern videotape or a TV recipe, and then sold them in the modern era. Then, as everyone is eating this food, they will think that they are eating the same things as emperors in the old days.
宫廷菜，清汤虎丹。只要你有了录影带和菜谱，就可以在自己家里享用了。
But even if you make these recipes, you really can't actually be the emperor, so it explores topics related to class, consumption, desire, etc. After 2000, I made another series called Microbiology Association. At the time, I modeled a research organization, Microbiology Association, then a PhD-guided research on how humans should face the future during the Armageddon. So, there were many topics we can explore. For instance, its first project was called the Clothing Project. This project was part of the Taipei Biennial. If this world is about to be destroyed, then would people still have to wear clothes? In the future world, how will people's requirements for clothing be different from the past? I modeled future clothing. It might not just be for looking good or warmth, it might also have various types of futuristic functions. It could heal your sicknesses or help you sleep. Many fantastic media might be brought into our lives in a future world. So actually, we can say that new media art, apart from having the creative development of areas of a traditional art, what's very important is its imagination of the future and problems that we are confronting in the current digital age. So, in contemporary society, digital media have already existed all around us, including the phones, computers, and internet that we use in daily life. These can easily become tools of artistic creation. So, if we are in the digital age, feeling that art is also going through stark changes, then we can also try to make this kind of creation. I hope that the class today will be useful for all of you and that you have gotten something from it. That's all for today. See you next time.